Hi folks, with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the goings on in Britain, and particularly this two-tier policing and two-tier punishment, and just the insanity and the craziness of it all. So here was an interesting statistic. Now, I haven't drilled down deep into the numbers here, but I've gone through it to a sufficient extent to do this vid. But we're talking about somewhere in the region of 150,000 people were arrested for knife crime. Now, the definition of the knife crime seemed to be a little broad here. It's carrying a long-bladed weapon, or using the weapon, or threatening somebody with the long-bladed weapon. These include just long knives, machetes, and so on. Now, these were crimes that England is not noted for these crimes, but since mass migrations occurred coming from third world locations where this sort of knife crime is just how things are done, then these people have brought their knife crime habits with them. Why they're not vetted, or why they're not sort of given induction, onboarding, if you like, type courses before being let out into the public is quite beyond me. But anyway, where do they acquire these knives? I mean, how can you get that many machetes in a country where there's no jungle and no one uses machetes? But anyway, so something like 150,000 people arrested over the last 12 months, if I've understood the numbers correctly, and or more than that. But how many of these people actually got jail time or prison time or some sort of, serious control orders from the courts? Now, the police are arresting them. Now, if you look at the amount of people that the police, because the police in England are terrified of being accused of being racist, there's these supposed reports, outrageous ideological reports and studies that claims that the police are institutionally racist, whatever the fuck that means. And so, given their reluctance to arrest people, you've got to assume that the arrests have been the more serious sort of offenders. So, out of 150 or over 150,000, how many actually got jail time? Now, bear in mind that people are being thrown in prison at the moment in Britain for doing a mean tweet or for posting something online which is a bit edgy. People in their 60s or 70s. You've done a mean social media posting. It's prison for you, mate. And yet you can run around, London with a machete, even threaten people with it, even have a machete fight on the main street, and you don't get prison time. So the mean social media post gets prison time. Run around threatening people with a machete gets no prison time. I mean, that's the insanity of the situation there at the moment. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But out of these 150,000 people who were arrested, or over 150,000, none of them got prison time. Well, we're talking zero got prison time, according to these numbers at least. Now, they didn't get prison time, but amongst those, the majority of them were repeat offenders. Now, it doesn't say what the repeat offence is, so the repeat offence could have been for, I don't know, drug dealing or something, who knows, but they are repeat offenders. So they've been in front of the courts previously, and now they're being arrested for, in this instance, knife crime, but still the courts don't put them in prison. They're just getting things like a slap on the wrist, or 100 hours of community service, or a suspended sentence, or maybe an ankle location bracelet, things like that. But prison time, no. Some are getting sort of temporary home detention, but it's hard to believe that these are serious crimes, threatening people with knives, or stabbing people with knives, or carrying the machetes around. Should that not have some sort of serious penalty? Well, yes, I think it should. But we've got some old woman copies in a posting from someone else, and the government says, well, that's a white woman, by the way, that's spreading hate. That's racial hatred that's spreading. Again, very vague definition of what racial hatred's meant to be. So it can be kind of whatever they want it to be. And then the woman the police are on the door, they're arrested. The courts seem incredibly zealous in putting these people in prison. Why aren't they as zealous on the knife crime? So we've got a divide in the criminality at the moment of those who oppose or question or criticize globalization or its central platforms, such as mass migration. So if you criticize globalization or defy it or question it, and then you spread that defiance out amongst others online, then that is criminal. You defy globalization and you're an ideological political criminal, and the state will deal with you. They will not tolerate anything that opposes globalization. That is unacceptable defiance. It must be crushed and punished. But you can roam around with the machete, stabbing people, having machete fights, and you can do all that stuff. You can be a repeat offender. And the government's, well, okay, that's kind of not desirable. We don't like that level of disorder, but it's not a threat to the globalization project. Every time you go out in the street waving a machete, you are undermining the Western society. You are destroying and subverting the confidence and the self-confidence. You're creating social disorder and disharmony. You're creating racial conflict and racial division. This is what we want. This is essential for the globalist project. So the machete wielder is actually performing a service for globalization. So they really shouldn't be. We kind of don't want you chopping people up. That's not a good look. But just about anything else is okay with us, because you are a foot soldier and a service provider for globalization. We applaud you. We salute you. You're performing a service. You are the enemy of our enemy, and we love you for that. But by putting on a mean tweet that questions, opposes, puts globalization in an unflattering light, ideological criminal, is prison for you, motherfucker. And that's the divide we have at the moment. And now, just as I've spoken to a number of people who, I know quite a few sort of lawyers and people in the judiciary and so on, and they don't. This is in I won't mention the area where I've come across them, but they take pretty much a similar view to this. They're on board with the globalist ideological position that talking against globalization is only something that far-right fascist Nazi thug Hitler, Nazi saluting, swastika waving people would do. So they're the bad. So the people that oppose globalization are those people. They're the bad people. So it's okay if we just put them in prison. And so what if it's a bit arbitrary, or we single them out for particularly harsh treatment? They're Nazis. Well, we're allowed to. Whereas the other people, the black machete wielder, well, they don't have as much social power. They don't have social power, and just because the white people, the Nazis, don't like them, then that kind of means they're good. So we should protect them only because the Nazis don't like them. And so machete wielding is okay because it upsets the Nazis and and so they've got this odd ideological view. It's insane. You can't believe it. But you're a judicial officer. You've taken an oath to uphold the law and the Constitution, and yet you're carrying on like a little ideological cultural studies moron in first year college or something. What is this? You're a fucking judge, for Christ. So, but no, they don't see it that way, and they see very much that they have a role to play. The judges, the lawyers, the Department of Prosecutions, they have a role to play to uphold and support and further and bolster the globalist project, because the globalist project puts those damn working class white fascist Nazi straight people, Christians, in their place. Therefore it's a good thing. So what if we break a few eggs to make the omelette? Who cares? And this is again very much an ideological attitude. that Stalin and the goons in the Soviet Union or Chairman Mao took. So what if we kill 10, 20, 30 million people? We're furthering an ideology. We're getting closer to paradise on earth. So what if tens of millions of people are killed in there? Ideologically, the purity is what matters. Now, one of the things that's always intrigued me is how much everyone huffs and puffs about Nazis, swastikas, Hitler, and it's the automatic go-to. And typically in any discussion about globalization and mass migration, it'll take between 20 and 30 seconds for a pro globalization speaker to go to Nazi Germany. So, and there are those that question mass migration like Nazi Germany, like Hitler, and straight they go for it just instantly. And I mean, it's quite pathetic, and it shows how piss weak their arguments are in support of globalization. But the period of Nazi Germany was, or any ideological grouping, be it the Soviets or the communist Chinese, Pol Pot in Cambodia, it doesn't matter. But one of the things they have to do and must do if they're going to further their ideological agenda, and bear in mind the Nazis were quite low on the ideological scale. The Soviet communists, the Chinese communists, Pol Pot, and so on, they had to do this because the majority of the people were not in support of the government they were forcing on them. It's a little bit different. In Nazi Germany, the majority of the people were in support of the Nazis or the National Socialist Party, as they were called. And the reason is that the National Socialist Party delivered on their election promises. They created full employment and a level of prosperity that was the envy of the rest of Europe. And whenever you deliver on your election promises and improve people's lives, which the National Socialist government did, then they're going to support you. It doesn't matter. So coming down to the law, in the first few years, the Nazis invited the Jews to leave Germany. So we'd like you to leave. We'll even help you to leave. We'll pay you to leave Germany. So, but for the ones that couldn't get, bear in mind there was an international depression at the time, and migrating anywhere was a tough gig unless you were very skilled. And many of about half the 400,000 Jews that were in Germany at the time, less than 0.5%, less than half of 1% of the population. They couldn't, 200,000 of them couldn't get visas, again, under difficult circumstances. So then the Nazis upped the ante in terms of, reducing, if you like, the legal rights of Jews. Now, to do that, they have to go to the justice system. They have to do this. So they must subvert the law, have very one-sided laws, subvert the courts, subvert the prosecution departments. This is always the go-to. And yet none of this is studied in legal practice or legal studies in certainly any university I'm aware of. Now, given that Hitler and the Nazis are the first go-to, if you want to say, well, if you want to characterize, caricature bad guys, that is the first go-to. So you'd think you would look, well, how did the Nazis go after the Jews? Was it just some rando thing and came out of the ether? No, they went to the justice system to do it, as any again, Stalin's Soviet Union or Mao's China, this is what they do. Because they always like the semblance of a legal system that appears just, that appears sober and balances the fact. They always want to have that mirage of a justice system that is utterly flawless and impartial, when in fact it's been outrageously subverted, as it has been and is currently in the West today. You don't send people to prison for a mean tweet, whereas you send the machete-wielding, multiple, career criminal guy, you give him a community service order. I mean, you're kidding me, right? But that shows just how much ideology drives the law. And it did in the case of, again, Stalin's Soviet Union, Lenin's Soviet Union, or Hitler's Germany. Now, what they did, what the Nazis did, is I'm simplifying a little bit here, but they made it so that any Gentile could make any complaint about any Jewish person, and the evidence bar was very low. It was the accusation was the evidence. So it's very low bar of evidence to go on, so that a Jewish person looked at me, and that was enough. And so, but when it came to a court case, the state then raised the evidence bars very high. So the accusation was very low of evidence, but same as any woman can go into anything and say, well, Billy Bob's the father of that child that I have. He's the one you have to go after to get child support. Okay, sign here, done. That's the evidence. Now, Billy Bob has to prove that it's not true and has to do so under a crushing burden of proof. So it's happening in the West today in many fronts, in many areas. We're going to accuse you of being a racist. We can accuse you with zero evidence. In order to prove you're not a racist, you have a very high bar to meet of evidence. So it's happening today in the West. So we can criticize the Nazis for doing it, or the Soviets for doing it, but it's happening in the West right now. And students are not studying the big exercises in history, legal history, where these subversions have taken place. Whether it's the Inquisition, Spanish Inquisition, or whatever, the Soviet show trials and so on. But so this was the technique. Now the Nazis used other techniques again that were used by the Soviets. These are the standard copybook. This is the playbook on how you go after people that you don't like and use the justice system and all its resources to do it. So other things that they would do, and I've mentioned this in previous videos. So say the Jewish person was summoned to a court. They've been charged with some crime. They've been summoned to a court in location A, and then right at the last minute they'll switch it to location B. They've told everyone else, but they haven't told the accused Jewish or the charged Jewish person. So they switch it to location B, which is 20 miles away. And they will inform the Jewish person 5 minutes before the hearing starts. And of course, the Jewish person can't get there in 5 minutes before. They can't travel 20 miles in 5 minutes. So the court can say, well, you didn't turn up. We had the hearing. You were told about it. You didn't turn up. And so we found you guilty in absentia. You weren't. We found you guilty. So look, you had every opportunity. You could have come to the court. We didn't stop you from coming to the court. But in fact, they did. Again, switching the location at the last minute. There was these sort of little tricks and scams that they use in the divorce courts today. Right now, this is happening in the divorce courts in the Western world. They use these sort of same tactics, and they think they're so morally fucking superior when they do it. I mean, for goodness sake. But we're only getting a straight white male Christian, which is code speak for Nazi. So we're only doing that. So you see, we're still doing a good thing. We're still very, very good people. But so, and another thing that they would do to the accused Jewish person would be to just simply say that all their witnesses witnesses have come to say that they weren't in a certain place at a certain time, therefore they could not be guilty of what they were charged of. So they've got all these witnesses turning up, then they just delay the hearing, and they just wait until the witnesses all have to go home because they can't wait indefinitely. And when they're satisfied, once they realise that they know and they're watching, the witnesses have gone home, they'll then have the hearing, and then they'll bring the Jewish person. Okay, where are your witnesses, Isaac? They had to all go home because the hearing was delayed. If you've got no witnesses here, then you've got no evidence, which means you fucking did it. We showcased it. Bang, that's it, guilty. So all these tricks, which again go on in the divorce courts right now. Right now, this is happening in the West, in the divorce courts. These are the same things that are. So when with this keenness, this zeal to rush to the Nazis, look at that, they're the bad guys. You're Hitler and you're a Nazi. Man. Let's look at what the Nazis, how they used the justice system to go after the Jews. Because surely that's the sort of thing. Now, if the Nazis couldn't have done that, if they'd gone to an independent court where the judge was completely independent and where upholding the rule of law and due legal process was central, mandatory for any. They could never have done what they did to the Jews. They just couldn't have done it. And they couldn't have made these arbitrary accusations and had these, just bypassed the rules of evidence and so on, and due legal process. So if we're going to protect a society, and this is the indication of a society that is progressive, that has advanced beyond, the Stone Age and the caveman, well, the clearest sign is completely independent and impartial justice with the rules. So if someone runs around with a machete chopping other people, or threatening to chop other people up, that they get prison time. The person that does the mean tweet is told, well, look, this is not the way to go. We're going to ban you from the internet if that sort of thing. There can be ways of doing it within the law and within due legal process. And that's clearly not happening today. You've been a fantastic start, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.